if you are just joining us this morning, then the big breaking news is that Brentford against Manchester United has been postponed. That's supposed to be happening this evening, and it's after a COVID-19 outbreak at the Old Trafford club.
Yep, not good news. The league says the decision was made following guidance from medical advisors due to the exceptional circumstances of the outbreak. In the past the past week, 42 Premier League players and staff have tested positive.
Yeah, Brighton, Tottenham, Leicester, Aston Villa and Norwich all have confirmed cases, and Sunday's Brighton against Spurs fixture was also postponed following COVID-19 outbreak at Spurs 2. Now, we were speaking to the Times chief football writer Henry Winter earlier on our show, and he said that a decision needs to be made on whether football can still go ahead.
Government and society have to make a call on this one, whether there's an element of this that we just have to live with and just get on with life, keep the economy going, keep the shops going, keep the hospitality industry going. Obviously our world revolves around football, but there's so many industries that are being impacted by this. But I think that that's a decision that will effectively be made by the scientists and be made by the NHS. And if the numbers are too much, and there are too many people, particularly those who are double vaxxed and even some with the booster who are going into hospital, then obviously a call has to be made on football.
Okay, here we are at the moment in this situation where lots of people are worried that it might be coming around again, it might be happening again. We're all being urged to take as much of the government's guidance as we can in, which is obviously the right thing to do. In terms of all of these games being called off, it's such a difficult situation to call, and if you want to know the guidance behind the scenes, the clubs have been going to the Premier League on an individual basis, and the clubs will then make a decision again on an individual case-by-case basis as to whether or not the game can be called off. Ali, it's really difficult to know where to go with this. We spoke to you about it earlier on. As a former player yourself as well, Darren, how would you feel in this kind of situation if you were the footballer?
Listen, first and foremost, you want everyone to be safe. I think that's the most important thing. We all love football. We all missed it when it wasn't there, but unfortunately in terms of life, football's relatively small in terms of what's going on. But as a footballer, you just, as I said, you want to play the games. You want a chance to go and play the games, but it is a difficult one because as much as you want to go out there, you want to entertain, you want to obviously play the season, if things are going on, you're getting games called off left, right and centre, you start thinking to yourself, well, should really we be doing this? And I think that's probably the question you need to ask, is because, as I said, we all love it. We all love watching it. When it came back, even though it was different with no supporters, you were still glad that it was back, that there was some form of football. But I still think now, going back to that, would you want to play again behind closed doors when we've come so far in terms of getting it kind of back to normal? I don't think you would. Obviously, there's going to have to be precautions again. Are the players going to have to start, where they were coming into the training ground, changing in their cars, in their bubbles? Is that going to happen again to keep it going? So there's all these different factors that you've got to kind of add into the equation again. But as I said, first and foremost, it's got to be safe. First, that is the most important thing. And if it's not right to do so, then the government, the Premier League have got to get together and make a decision, I think, a lot sooner than they did last time. Because last time, in my opinion, it went on too long. This time now, they keep talking about this new variant. It's supposed to be a lot stronger, a lot worse. So then they need to come to a decision rather quickly, rather than kind of wait to see what happens. They need to get ahead of it and make a decision.
Ali?
Dan, spot on, really. The first thing and the priority is everybody's health and safety and welfare. Of course it is. We would miss our football, you better believe we would. I thought we made the kind of best of a bad situation last time. A load of games were behind closed doors, clearly missing the fans. At least we had something to watch, which was great. However, with the speed this new variant's moving at, you'd have to predict that something drastic might happen in terms of our sport. In the grand scheme of things, it's not drastic, but in terms of the sport and what we love watching, something might be happening. Whether the players have to get in the bubble, whether they stop fans going to games, you'd have to say, sadly, that prediction might prove to be correct in the coming weeks or so. But listen, Woodsy, spot on. Just to echo what Darren said, if we're talking about people's health and safety here, then we've got to do what's right.
I think, and listen, I fully understand that there are people out there that absolutely love football. They live and they breathe it. When it wasn't there, they missed it like crazy. And we're fortunate enough to work in an industry where, when things are starting to change, football's like one of the last things to go. So that they hang on as long as they can to kind of keep it going, because they know how important it is to so many different people. But as I said, there are so many bigger issues in terms of then just football. So I think this is why, rather than kind of keep it going and shall we make a decision, shall we not, so we keep having these individual cases, not collectively. I think they need to come together collectively, make a decision, and it might be a bit premature, but you'd rather be safe than sorry.
It's so hard to even have an opinion in this kind of thing because we aren't privy to what happens at clubs with their medical history, with the conversations that they have with the Premier League either. And we're not doctors and we don't sit here and pretend that we are. So I think we just have to wait for whatever decision they come to and trust it's the best one. Listen to the advice from the government, listen to what the Premier League are trying to do and how they're trying to deal with it, and keep our fingers crossed and hope that it is the right thing to do. In terms of forming bubbles, we know how difficult that can be for individual players to do, not just in the world of football but in the world of cricket as well. We've heard of a lot of difficulties when you are bubbling up for a really long period of time and how that can really affect your mental health. So there's a line here to be drawn somewhere, and you just hope that they take the right decisions to move this forward, because going for games behind closed doors again, just it sucks the soul out of clubs and the finances, and it's not just our entertainment and our enjoyment of it, but that really has a massive knockdown effect on the rest of the footballing pyramid, doesn't it, Darren?
But that's the most important thing, as you said there, the footballing pyramid, because listen, the Premier League are fortunate enough that, listen, it makes absolute billions. Do you know what I mean? It's got that much money that they can afford the clubs to do the individual bubbles and do it that way collectively, but it filters down to the Championship, and they are really struggling at the minute. When I hear people talk about the finances in the Championship, they're struggling, then you start going further and further down. It's such worrying, because as you said, you look at some of the League 2 clubs, League 1s, even beyond that, it kind of filters to the Premier League. You look at the talent, the grassroots talent that's made their way all the way up to the Premier League. All of a sudden that's cut off again. Does it survive a second time? I'm not quite sure it does. I mean, they just about survived the first time, but as I said, you hope there's a plan in place that if the worst comes to the worst and sport as a whole does stop in this country, there's a way that everyone throughout from top end to bottom end can still kind of maintain its survival.